fourth time recording this. Hopefully, fourth time is a charm here. But with that being said, hey everybody, my name is Nolan. Today I'm going to be doing a SCOT analysis on season three's episode 1 of the Black Mirror Nosedive. And with that being said, I'm just going to show you guys a quick roadmap of where we're going to be heading for this. So, a roadmap is I'm going to be explaining what SCOT is basically in plain English. We're going to go into the world of Nosedive, like a quick recap on how the episode works. And then I'm going to show you guys 2 selected scenes that I chose that I thought really gave us a good example. And then we're going to go over what the show kind of asks us to think about. And then finally, we're going to go over some key takeaways. And I'm going to kind of throw in some real world examples as well in between the takeaways and then asking what the show thinks. So basically, SCOT is going to be, well, first of all, it means the social construction of technology. But basically, we're kind of trying to say that technology doesn't run by itself. The people and institutions decide how the tool determines the means and how it's used. So our 4 terms that are going to be really useful for us here with using SCOT is our relevant social groups, interpretive flexibility, the problems and controversies, and closure and stabilization. In the episode Nosedive, we are going to see all 4 of these just through the apps. So a little snapshot of kind of how this episode works is in Nosedive, every interaction is rated on 1 to 5 stars. Your average of these ratings are going to control the housing. Well, the average in general is going to control the housing, travel, and opportunities. So with our main character here, Lacey, in this episode, she wants to jump from a 4.2 to a 4.5 for her status perks. There's a few awkward moments, though, that we do see that lower her score, and everything starts to kind of lock her out because of that. And that's going to be very important for our analysis. So, who cares about the rating? We're going to be talking about the relevant social groups here. So, we have people like status seekers who are going to be Lacey, and then there's companies and platform designers, and then there's going to be gatekeepers. These are going to be like your landlords, airlines, employers, and then there's going to be resistors like Susan, the truck driver that we do see in the episode. And with that, we're going to move on to the interpretive flexibility, basically asking us, what do the stars mean? So, for this, so it's the same stars for everyone, but they have different meanings. For peers, it's going to be like a high score will kind of signal politeness and success. For companies, it's kind of similar to Yelp that we have in the real world, where it kind of shows your risk score to pricing to denying services and all that kind of stuff that is ran through businesses. For resistors, this is kind of be like our modern day conspiracists, like that I can relate it to the real world there. These are people who think it's fake and it's kind of meant for control. And then that disagreement is going to be what's our SCOT analysis is going to call interpretive flexibility. So moving on, we're going to go to our first scene, which that I chose is the airport scene. So at the airport, Lacey has a small breakdown. Her score dips under the threshold, so the airline is not helping her. Security and the car rental pile on fees and limits. From our SCOT analysis view, this isn't fate or magic numbers. This is showing that the organizations chose to trust the score and write it into policy. The tech becomes more powerful in this society because the institutions adopt it and put it into power here. Moving on to our next scene, we have chose the wedding speech. So at the wedding, her image is everything here. I chose this picture showing this is kind of like a good representation of Lacey at the wedding speech. So when Lacey drops her polished act, the crowd immediately downrates her. So using this for our Scott takeaway is that the community enforces like a right way to use the app. Um, Basically, it's saying they want you to smile, flatter, avoid conflict, and that's one of the interpretations that how or that just shows like interpretation to the audience like becomes the norm. Like you kind of live for other people's view and not your own. So this is going to show us our problems, controversies, and then we're going to move on to closure. So the problem is that pressure to perform, inequality, and shallow interactions. That those are like the main problems. For the controversies, it kind of shows like is it really fair to lock housing or travel behind a number, and how it affects like mental health or authenticity. And closing, like despite the issues, the score gets embedded into like contracts and pricing, so it feels normal and objective. So moving on, how does this episode position us, the audience? This episode really points the camera at us. Because we already live in a society where likes, reviews, and self-branding are a very prominent thing now, especially with the internet becoming more popular as every year goes by. Like the pastel friendly design shows how like control can feel pleasant, and the final scene, like the jail scene, suggests another path where people refuse the metric and speak honestly. Now, for my personal real world connections that I kind of thought of were like rideshare and delivery apps like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, I guess, is one. I don't know if people still use that, but like the people who do deliveries or do the rides, they are also scored on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. And then this can give them, from what I've heard, bonuses, deactivations, or priority matching to customers. Another thing I can kind of think of with like more metrics is like credit scores. Credit scores does make more sense though, but like it just shows that a single index can open so many doors for people like with good credit scores, and then like they're able to have access to many more things to do like money wise. And then there's also like the social media metrics like followers, likes, like influencers and whatnot. It kind of shows like their social status. And another thing we have is Yelp, this is a big one for like restaurants or like places of business, is they are also scaled on 1 to 5 stars. A lot of people, like, they're not going to go to anywhere on Yelp that has below 4 stars. So it creates kind of a barrier of entry. It shows how like big like perception is. Like that's why if somebody has like a bad experience with a restaurant and the restaurant could be good, they could just review bomb them, and then to everybody else's perspective they think it's a bad restaurant now because of all the bad reviews, but in reality it could have really just been one person. So our key takeaways here are going to be that power comes from social adoption and rules, not just the app itself. So relating this back to the real world, it's going to be kind of stuff like I said before, like perception is key. So we're also going to see that different groups fight over what stars mean. So this could mean like the resistors, like they think it means nothing. They think it's objective, or they think it's like the basically trying to get control of people, while there's people like people pleasers like Lacey who think it's everything. They try to like boost it as much as possible for their own self-perception. And finally we have like scores can gate access, which will make inequality, but it'll seem neutral with the numbers. So with this, we can relate this back to the real world too. When it comes to gating access, there's like GPA requirements for schools because of a number. Credit scores, like lower credit makes you unable to make certain financial purchases or decisions, while higher credit obviously grants you larger freedoms. So that's going to be the main key takeaways for today. And that'll be it for my SCOT analysis on Nosedive. Thank you.